Colorado, North Dakota State, week 1 preview here tonight, Joe. Look, there was a lot of buzz around Colorado last year, specifically in the beginning of the year. They beat the national champion runner-up in TCU in week 1. I think everybody was on the hype train because it was so much fun to cover them. Then, look, their depth caught up to them throughout the season. Let's just call it what it is. They had injuries. They would not run the football, whichever one you want to say. Shedeur Sanders was really good. Travis Hunter was really good. Shiloh Sanders at times was really good. Mm-hmm. But they go up against a team in the FCS that's been very good in their own right, that being North Dakota State. As someone who covers the FCS like you do, your thoughts going on in this game with North Dakota State and Colorado?
Yeah, so for some context, I am a national voter for the Stats Reform poll, which is basically the same thing as the AP poll. Having been a former FCS player and whatnot, I'm very familiar with what North Dakota State has done over the past couple of years. I'm not going to come out here with some crazy take saying that North Dakota State's going to upset them. This is a situation, and North Dakota State is the type of team that if you show up unprepared and overlooking them, you will deeply regret it. And Deion Sanders has even been open about this. Like he said during Big 12 Media Days that jokingly and almost sounded a little serious, saying that he's mad at the AD for scheduling this years ago or whenever this was scheduled, because it's really not a tune-up game. This is you got to have all your T's crossed. You can't really just go out there and fly past them. But I think because of how clearly that Deion Sanders isn't coming out talking shit and coming out completely discounting them, they're going to be completely fine. You pointed one thing out to us in the open, or not in the open, but in our pre-show when we were discussing that receiver room, the passing attack is extremely dynamic. While North Dakota State has a very talented safety who's going to go on to play in the NFL in Cole Wisniewski, they don't really have the corners to keep up with this many receivers. It's just not the type of team that they're used to seeing at the FCS level. It's a lot of ground and pound. It's a lot of punch you in the mouth, win at the line of scrimmage. Their offensive lines and defensive lines are going to be better than anyone anticipates because they keep a lot of guys in state and they put out a lot of guys to the NFL. But I just think that there's too much on the outside for the Bison to keep up with them.
So look, I'll get to that in a little bit, but here's the thing. If you're North Dakota State, what you have to do to keep this game close, there's a brand new offensive line in Colorado. You're going to have to send the heat. You're going to have to confuse them up front. You have a true freshman at left tackle, Joe, that you're going to have to confuse. I know the kid was a 5-star. It doesn't matter. Look, there are things that will be thrown at you in college that no matter how talented you are, that if you're confused and you don't know what to do, it can really burn you. Mm-hmm. If you're going to keep this game close, the way that I see it here would be defensively, you got to get after Shedeur Sanders. I'm rushing off of the left side of the offensive line since you do have that true freshman. But to your point, and we were talking about this in pre-show, Joe, if Omarion Miller is the 4th wide receiver at Colorado, and I would even put him 5th because Travis Hunter will be rotating in there.
Right.
Joe, they don't have the depth nor the talent to cover all those dudes. And for that reason alone, I'm not going to say it's going to be a blowout or anything like that. I just think Colorado, top to bottom, is more talented. They have more guys. And I think North Dakota State does present a very tough matchup for them. It's a completely different style. It's like choose your fighter, Joe. Do you want the guy that's going to punch to the body or do you want the guy that's going to jab to the head? Pause. It's a completely different style of fighter. The thing for me that I want to see for Colorado in this game, are you willing to run the football? Are you willing to hand the ball off and get 3 yards, 4 yards in a run?
That might be tough to do this game.
Well,
seriously.
Well, here's the thing. That might be fine and dandy, and it might be tough. But here's the problem with that. You got to show me that you can try to establish it. You can't put everything on Shedeur Sanders like you did a year ago. Joe, he had 430 passing attempts last year in 12 games. That is
a lot.
Insane. They threw the ball all day long. It was more air raid than anybody in the country. They would throw the ball at premium. I think Against USC, they had 27 straight passing plays, Joe, with one run. You can't do that if you want to be a serious football team. Show me that you want to try to establish the run. Here's the second thing. Joe, defensively last year, you were horrid. You were one of the worst defenses in the country last year. You were actually 130th out of 130 teams in most statistical categories. Mm-hmm. Have you gotten better there since you've entered the transfer portal? Can you show me some exotic stuff defensively? I think that you are more talented, and I don't know if I want to say better coach, but Joe, the defensive line coach for Colorado is Warren Sapp, actually one of the best guests of AYS and AYS history, I might add. So I just want to bring up, Warren Sapp knows more about interior defensive line play than anybody that's going to be on that field on Saturday. Like anybody. I just want to make it very well known that I think that there's just top to bottom more talent. But there are some things that you got to see from Colorado in this game.
To the point that you made about running the football, I think that if they do have success on the ground, that to me is a positive sign that it's going to be less of a deficiency than it was last year. I think that if you're able to rack up yards and just kind of pick up more splash plays running the football, and also more of a willingness to stick with it even if it's not working early, I'm going to feel a little bit better about it. This does present a good tune-up opportunity in the sense where they're not just going to lay down and give up after a quarter. We've watched plenty of times where big Power 4 teams play these crappy FCS opponents and they give up. You know, these FCS teams, they get smoked early. I've played in a game my freshman year. We played against Kansas, and we got our asses kicked so bad by Kansas that, like, after the first 3 quarters of the first quarter, we didn't even try. Like, it didn't even look like we had a pulse. North Dakota State's not going to be like that. So if you're able to run the ball well, knowing that they've got some hard-nosed linebackers and some underrated defensive linemen, if you're able to produce success there, I'm going to feel better about that. One note, though, like if I am North Dakota State, knowing how they typically play in situations like this, they're going to set a lot of pressure. They're not going to just sit back on their heels and hope their secondary keeps up with them.
Let's talk about this for a minute then. Mm-hmm. Joe, you have a brand new left tackle. You got brand new guards, brand new center. I mean, let me ask a question that people that watch this clip video is going to kill me for. Is this a big time question mark? Like, could you see Colorado and North Dakota State 28-21 going into the fourth quarter because of this?
I don't think it's going to be. There's going to be too many just big explosive splash plays in the passing game, in my opinion. You have made the most clear important point here.
Joe, if he can't get the football off, it doesn't matter how good those receivers are.
It's a good point. It's actually a very good point. If this game is close, it's going to be for that reason. It's going to be because they don't counter properly. And look, I will say this. Somebody pointed out something about Shurmur. I keep forgetting that Pat Shurmur is the offensive coordinator. I detest Pat Shurmur. I'm a Giants fan. I have watched that man for way too many football games. He is not a good play caller. I don't care if I get yelled at for this. I would just pay close attention to the decision-making in this game. And look, there was a drop-off. There was a drop-off when he was calling the plays at the end of last year that was maybe not as tangible or noticeable because Colorado wasn't getting the same level of attention as it was early on in the season. But, if this game does end up being close, though, man, it's going to be because North Dakota State just all-out sends pressure and Shurmur does not do an effective job of countering against it.
What do they have to lose?
North Dakota State has nothing to lose. That's the point.
So, I mean, look, I know that there's production along the Colorado offensive line. Like, it's not like you're not getting scrubs. Like, they didn't go get just scrub dudes from the portal. But I think people miss so many times what cohesiveness and togetherness along that at that position brings. Look, Joe, you know this. I played it. Joe, if you don't know what the man to your left and the man to your right is going to do if you're in the interior, you will be in trouble. Like, bro, me and the 2 guards that I played with, literally went everywhere together. Literally. I wanted to know the way that they thought. They wanted to know the way that I thought. And the same for guys like Kevin Hughes, who played at St. Louis for a long time with the Rams. I got to know what you're going to do if there is certain situations that are being called, because if you're going to know to pick that blitz up, I'm not going to call it and give it early in the game, right? Like I'm going to let you do what you do. I'm not going to, as a center, I'm going to give away as least amount of possible as I can, right? I'm not going to be a chatterbox out there other than identifying who the middle guy is, where the outside will is, all those kinds of different things. If there is a matchup, here's the two biggest matchups. We talked about them. The DB room for North Dakota State, I don't think they have any chance there because of the talent that Colorado possesses. But I think if Colorado makes a statement, it's because the offensive line is going to be better than what maybe some are anticipating. But here's another thing too. They're going to run the football better. They got to run the football better this year than they did last year if they want any type of success.
Yeah, before we get we're not, to be perfectly clear here, we're not saying that Colorado's going to
be a 25, 30-point spread.
Yeah. We don't think that this is going to be a close game, and we think that Colorado is going to start the season with a strong opening statement because, first of all, they need to. Like, they need to come out and say, like,
they started one with
anyone
last year,
who was,
it didn't matter.
Well, I think that what's coming into this season is far different than coming into last season, because last season everybody was excited and had low expectations. And then they started talking a lot of shit, and then they started to struggle. So now a good chunk of people, we're not some of these people, but there's a good chunk of college football fans that maybe were indifferent or maybe were rooting for Deion Sanders in Colorado that turned into serious haters. I know that they don't care about silencing anyone.
Fans, Lakers fans, Cowboys fans. That's the other teams they root for too.
I think that, though, that there is going to be an intention here to come out in this game focused, driven, attention to detail, prove that you're as good as you've been talking. It feels like that there is an intensity for this game, again, just from the way that they've been talking leading into it. I mean, they talk smack about every opponent. It feels like they're not doing that with North Dakota State, which is pretty interesting to kind of.
No, that's what we brought. Remember when we talked about Deion 2 weeks ago, and the conversation you and I had was, Joe, it felt as if that they were taking things a little bit more seriously, which made me feel better about them as a program. Yeah. Let me address this, Guy. I think in the chat here, easier to gel with guys that are experienced with experienced production. Not if you haven't played with each other. Look, one chink in the armor can exploit everything. Joe, they're going to run out there with a guy like Quincy Wiggins, okay, on the defensive line. North Dakota State going to run the ball right at him. You're going to find out what them transfers are really like. All right, now.
This video is sponsored by the online fitness training camp presented by Chris Gates Fitness. When I first started talking about Chris, about partnering with our show, not only was I excited to have a fitness sponsor for our pod, but more importantly, when I found out about how he can help people achieve their goals, I was even more bought in, because when the football season starts, it is so tough to stay on top of things and also to be able to enjoy yourself on Saturdays when it's game day. With Chris Gates Fitness's online training camp, you're going to be able to effectively stay focused, consistent, burn fat, build muscle, and do it with a like-minded community of individuals working towards the same thing. On top of this, you're going to be able to get direct coaching from Chris and the ability to ask him questions with an access to a live Q&A where you can get direct, personalized support from Chris himself. Don't wait any longer. If you're trying to get in shape during this fall and you want to be able to do it with the right support system, head on over to chrisgatesfitness.com/training camp or click the link in the description. And you need to do it today because you can get the first month. Personal training is expensive, folks. The first month for only $10 when you use that code Ruffino Joe. Don't wait any longer. Head on over there. BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts.